Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. I am with Laurence Juber, guitar virtuoso, Grammy winner, just a good guy. Interesting stories. He's telling us about the new album. His new album is A Day in My Life. It's a collection of a dozen of LJ's Beatles arrangements that were recorded in London's famed Abbey Road Studio #2, which of course the Beatles
See
recorded a
me,
lot of
you
their music.
can see me in front of the microphone, and there's my
Oh,
wife. There's my wife Hope at the console.
oh,
So,
great. Oh, she's because she produced, right? And she
yeah,
encouraged you for this
yeah,
album.
she produces these
Well,
records.
well, let's talk about the production of the album.
You know, it's a simple process when it comes to doing my solo acoustic guitar stuff because it's up to me to get the arrangements done and to get them under my fingers and get the performance aspect of it done. It's very different when I'm producing other people. I mean, I've got this Billy J. Kramer record coming out that we recorded in the same studio. And um, that is, a fairly large ensemble. And so I'm bringing into play not only the guitar playing, but also the arranging, the just the general logistics of getting a record made, which are not always simple. When you're dealing with spreadsheets and budgets and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that really engages me, I love to make records. I love to actually record music. And so Billy J's record, there's also a record by an artist named T-Bear that I co-produced and have did some writing with him too. And he's been getting some airplay on his stuff. He's a kind of a Leon Russell, Dr. John kind of area, and his Walter Trout's piano player, guitarist Walter Trout. So he's been playing a lot of blues recently. And the that process, and a lot of it gets done here, like in my studio, because I have Pro Tools and I have the good microphones and stuff like that. But that collaborative music making thing is a very satisfying area, because it's an adjacent to being a studio musician, where I get hired to go sit in a room with other great musicians or an orchestra. I mean, I played on Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas, and that was one acoustic guitar, but three harps, eight double basses, a choir, and a full orchestra. I mean, it's just you never quite know what you're going to walk into with that kind of scenario. Um, but making music in a recording studio is a big part of what I love to do. And then when I'm playing solo, I'm really bringing the scope of that experience into the solo guitar work. And that kind of where I live, And with my wife Hope producing my guitar stuff, it takes the responsibility off of me to be the objective part of the process because I'm so subjectively engaged in the actual music making there. And then, it's gone on to the next generation because our daughter Ilse is a very successful songwriter. She's written some major hits over the last decade or so, including Panic at the Disco's High Hopes and Shawn Mendes' Mercy, All Night on Beyonce's Lemonade album.
Wow.
Nothing Breaks Like a Heart with Miley Cyrus and Mark Ronson.
Oh, you're not kidding. She's done some hits.
Oh yeah, she's had, in fact, her written by playlist on Spotify, last time I looked, was well over 130 songs.
Hmm.
But she recently put out her own album.
Proud Papa,
Yeah,
huh?
hashtag Proud Dad. She put
Hashtag
out her
proud
own
dad.
album called From the Valley. The first single was No California, which has been getting a lot of airplay. Um, and recently she opened for Train, the band Train in Europe. She played the Royal Albert Hall, and I
Oh,
joined her for
wow.
a song. And hashtag Proud Parents.
Yes. Wow. That is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
really great. It must be really great to kind of feel that passed down to your daughter,
Well, it's
your
very
love and your
satisfying, especially because she managed to find her own career path.
right. She did
And
it
then our
on
eldest daughter, Nico, who was in corporate marketing for a long time, she quit and wrote a musical that was produced off Broadway last year. So it's both kids, there's something genetic going on. And I think part of it comes from the fact that that Hope's father was a TV producer, writer producer, who created both Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch, Sherwood Schwartz. So
Both of which I would first thing when I got home from school. Those
yeah,
are what I'd plop down on the couch and I
and
watched.
neither of which I grew up with. So, when I fell in love with Hope and moved out to LA, and all of a sudden I'm in this kind of weird nexus of pop culture, British invasion meets American sitcom. Um, that provided a whole other, I mean, there's a whole other dimension to what Hope and I do together. In regard to, we wrote Gilligan's Island the musical. We have a very Brady musical that we've written together. She had a comedy rock and roll band called the Housewives, which I produced. And there's a lot that we do together that isn't even related to me simply playing guitar. So, and the kids grew up in that environment where they would fall asleep at the merch table at my concerts.
So wake up, sell a CD. Really, Lawrence, I think you got another career that you may not have considered. Maybe you have. Manifesting destiny. It sounds like, I mean, look at you. You fell in love with the Beatles. You got a guitar. You went and played with Paul McCartney for a couple of
And
years.
George and Ringo too. I mean, I played with 3 out of 4.
Yeah, your first session job is at with I mean, their producer, George Martin, and then you've got, or Sir George Martin, right? You've got you loved was it the Brady Bunch, or did you like Gilligan's
No,
Island?
neither of those were on my radar.
They weren't.
No, but I mean,
But
subsequently, I since have become a big fan of classic situation comedies. I mean, we recently
oh, me too.
a musical evening where we were hanging out with Dick Van Dyke, which was just magical. I mean,
Because isn't it great to go back to that stuff right now? Because it kind of feels nostalgic and like traditional and safe.
but it's also the skill, just the art.
Right,
I mean,
right, right.
you're talking about manifesting stuff. I mean, the reality is that's what it means to be an artist, is that you have a vision and you manifest it. And I think that the thing that I'm most appreciative of is the fact that I've had the opportunity to not only pursue my dream to be a musician and to be a guitar player, but also along the way, and especially from working with Paul McCartney, to understand what it means to be an artist and what the work ethic is and the process of that is. And so that's given me, all these different dimensions in my career and in my life that, I'm very grateful for.
Is there something, since you mentioned and you bring him up, Paul McCartney, that sticks with you to this day, that you talked about the work ethic, watching him work, and the work ethic it takes to be an artist, but is there something that you took from him specifically that you've used to success, or that you just have remembered and thought that's something I'd like to emulate, or I'd like to borrow?
We spent a lot of time talking about, some of the mechanics of it, but I think one of the biggest lessons was to understand that to be a creative artist didn't mean sitting there waiting for a bolt of lightning to hit you, across the head and, inspire some kind of brainwave. That it really is just, it's doing the work and continuing to do the work, and to not create obstacles to the work, but to use whatever obstacles there may be as a creative foil, as it were.
Do you have to step away from the work sometimes to come back refreshed, or is it better to push through for you to just keep playing and keep experimenting?
Depends on the deadline and the budget. It just depends what the project is. I mean, sometimes the best motivation is the clock, because if one is in the studio and paying the big bucks for a room like Abbey Road or Capitol, then there's a job that has to be done. And this album, it was a day in my life, and the title came about because it has both a day in the life and In My Life on the album, and I couldn't decide which of those titles to use, so I combined them and
That's
reflected the
clever.
reality. And I've done that a lot, where I've made an album in a day or a couple of days in a great studio with some great musicians, because with the preparation and with the fortitude and the dedication, the work gets done. Um, Whereas, if I'm recording at home, I might take 6 months to make a record. You just,
Yeah.
it all depends on
Yeah.
a lot of factors.
As you said, the deadline and the budget, those are two big motivating factors
Big
sometimes.
motivation.
Okay, we got to take our last break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to play your new single, and we're going to say goodbye. But before we do, I just had one last thought on the new album.
Mhm.
Um, is there, what do you hear, Laurence, that is you, that like, that's kind of do you have a signature? Do you have a certain sound that you go, that's me, that's my own stamp?
Yeah,
Maybe it doesn't come
it,
consciously, maybe it's subconsciously.
I think it takes me by surprise, because I don't really go back and listen to the records once they're done, delivered, and so it's when I hear it, or if I'm like, if it's somebody's on hold music and I'm listening and I don't hear it from the beginning of the phrase, I might jump in on the middle of a phrase. And it's like, well, who's that? And then then it's like,
He's
wait,
pretty good.
that sounds like me.
That
So
guy's
yeah,
good.
I mean, I recognize my own sound, and I definitely have my own approach to doing this, which is different from my peers. Um, and but I think that one of the things that really motivates me, and there's an intangible there, is the improvisational side of it, because there's the compositional side, there's the strict arranging side, but then there's the moments of improvisation
And
where,
does that come from your jazz years?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm from the rock too. I'm from playing, kind of blues rock lead guitar. I mean, it's just improvisation is part of the toolbox. But as time goes on, it becomes, I think, more important to me, because jazz is built on improvisation, but improvisation has a much longer history than jazz. I mean, you go back to the Renaissance, and those lutenists, Elizabethan lutenists, were basically improvisers. And they had their chord progressions that they would improvise on, and much like we have a 12-bar blues that we would improvise on now. Um, but that's a whole other, the musicological side of me is a whole other discussion, and we we don't have time for.
Masterclass. I'll take your masterclass. All right, let's take that break, and we'll be right back. We're talking with Laurence Juber, Grammy Award-winning, world-renowned guitar virtuoso, and don't take my word for it. We're going to play his music right now. Laurence Juber was voted the Guitarist of the Year by Fingerstyle Guitar magazine. And Guitar World says a stunning sense of space and fluidity, a truly wondrous sound. That's on the new album, A Day in My Life, Laurence Juber's latest album. Again, pick it up. It was recorded at Abbey Road Studio 2. You can stream it anywhere right now. It's available on a CD as well at the LJ store online, laurencejuber.com, and as a 180-gram vinyl LP from Amazon. Get it now. We'll be right back.